By the time I returned, 2 weeks later, I was met with the shock of my life. After watching the recordings from his car and the voice recorder that I had left in our bedroom, I now knew the truth. My husband was having an affair with my best friend. Not only that, but he was also planning to divorce me once Jason was 18. The two of them had even begun making plans to kill my brother and take his inheritance. That was the reason he adopted him, so that it would be easier for him. I was dumbfounded. My parents were both successful business people in New York. My father owned 3 thriving chocolate companies, while my mother had one that exported fabrics to different countries. In other words, we were wealthy. My brother Jason was born 10 years after me, but was born with crippled legs. They were unable to grow muscles very well and were said to be too weak to hold him up. My parents had him undergo necessary surgeries and a variety of different therapy sessions, but nothing worked. We finally gave up trying and accepted his condition. He had to move with the aid of a special wheelchair. However, his disability didn't stop us from loving him. Instead, it made us love him more. The two of us very close. We wore matching clothes throughout our childhood and teenage years despite the large difference in our ages and had each other's backs when needed. Over the years, our parents' businesses grew even broader. We went to the best schools, and by the time I was 25, I'd completed my education and was ready to get into the world of business. As expected, my father put me in charge of one of his companies. One afternoon, I was at a park with my brother, enjoying the evening breeze, when a young man approached us.
Hello, I'm Desmond. Can I sit with you both?
He looked quite decent. Nevertheless, I alerted our bodyguard who was standing around. We had been hounded by a few reporters in the past, and I thought he could be one. In case he wanted to start interviewing us, our bodyguard would come out to stop him. However, he proved my thoughts wrong. He simply spent the 30 minutes he sat with us reading. Afterward, he left. 2 weeks later, I had to recruit workers for some new positions I had created, and Desmond was one of those who applied. I was impressed at how well he did and took him in before others.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I'll make sure to do my best.
True to his word, he showed his efficiency in the first 2 months, and as time went on, he was excelling at any task that he was given. Seeing this, I figured that he would make a great personal assistant, and I offered him the position. He eagerly accepted, and we began working and spending more time together, which made us get closer than we ever thought. One day, after working, he confessed to me.
I have a huge crush on you, ma'am.
I was shocked, yes, but it was mutual. I couldn't deny that I also liked him. Our relationship proceeded from there, and soon I had to introduce him to my parents.
Isn't he just an employee? Are you sure he truly loves you, or he's just here for your money?
They were doubtful about his intentions, but I did my best to convince them that he was being real with me. My brother, who hadn't seen him since the first time we met, recognized him and took a liking to him immediately. After some time, he proposed to me. Jason congratulated us when we announced it to my family.
Desmond treats me so well. I support your marriage.
Although my parents were still quite doubtful, they had no choice but to support their daughter's happiness. Our wedding wasn't so elaborate, but it was grand. According to Desmond, his parents were dead and he had no relatives, so he had no one by him for the wedding. But I didn't mind. 3 months after our wedding, my parents met with a plane crash accident that claimed their lives. It was a tough period for my brother and I. But Desmond was there for us. He comforted us until we managed to get over it. 3 months later, he suddenly brought up a proposal.
Since Jason isn't of age to control the other companies, why don't I take charge until then?
I didn't like the idea and refused. That brought about our first argument.
I'm your husband. Don't you trust me to do well?
I let him understand that I trusted him. However, even though I didn't like the idea, my parents had set a rule that no one except my brother and I could run the companies. He finally understood my point, and that issue died. I managed to oversee all companies and ensured to expand them even more than my parents did. My husband still worked under me, and I was grateful that he was satisfied with it. Around that time, we began trying to have a child, but none came. Worried, I went to a doctor to find out what was wrong, and they told me that I would need years of fertility treatments if I wanted a chance of becoming pregnant. I was devastated, but as usual, my husband comforted me.
2-3 years isn't a long time. I can wait.
I felt relieved. If Desmond was fine with waiting, I was too. Sometime later, he brought up another suggestion.
Babe, why don't we adopt your brother? While we wait for our children, let's start learning to be parents by taking care of him.
I tried to tell him that Jason was fine being my brother and his in-law, but Desmond was persistent on adopting him. After a few persuasions, I finally agreed. After all, it's entirely for our good. I informed my brother, who was 15 years of age, about our plan. He seemed skeptical about agreeing at first, but he later did after I convinced him that Desmond would be a great father to him, and it would help me learn to be a good mother.
I'm only agreeing to this because I love you both.
We soon began the necessary process. It took about 2 weeks, and afterward we were both legal parents of my brother. Desmond proved to be a great father. He was doing so well that I was free to leave Jason in his care when I had to travel to Italy to take care of an important issue that arose in my father's second company. However, when I returned, I got some news that didn't sit well with me.
Aunt Kathy came over while you were away, and she was here until yesterday. She always slept in the same room with Desmond. He barely had time for me and treated me differently during that period.
I was surprised. Kathy was my best friend, and she told me she was away on a vacation in the UK. I asked my brother if he was sure about what he was saying, and he confirmed that he was. Kathy and Desmond were always bickering every time they were around each other. How could she suddenly spend a whole week with him, and while I was away? I confronted Desmond.
What? How could Jason tell such a lie? I was hardly ever home because I was always at work. You can ask the chef. She was the one who watched over Jason throughout the period you were away.
I called the chef and she confessed that Desmond was telling the truth. I felt betrayed. Why would Jason tell such a lie? I disciplined him greatly. However, no matter how much words I said to him, he stuck to the fact that he was telling the truth. I buried the issue and apologized to Desmond. I also had Jason apologize to him too. A week later, I had to travel again. This time, I spent 3 weeks. On the day I was to return, I got a video message from Jason. As I opened it, I was shocked to see Kathy leaving the house with Desmond. I hurriedly returned home.
I was telling the truth. He's cheating on you.
I was furious. I requested a video call with Kathy, and when she accepted, I saw that she was in bed with her husband. I thought she was pretending and asked her husband a few questions. In his response,
"We've been home together all day. What are you talking about?"
I was confused. What do I believe? The picture clearly showed Kathy, and Jason said she left that morning, but Kathy's husband was saying otherwise. I couldn't confront Desmond again. Jason had told me how Desmond threatened to kill him if he said anything to me again. I decided to confide in one of my friends who gave me some advice.
You have to see it yourself to know the truth.
I followed her advice. Before I had to travel again, I contacted my personal lawyer. If it ended up being true, I was going to file for divorce. I set a camera in his car and a voice recorder before leaving again. I spent even longer there. By the time I returned, 2 weeks later, I was met with the shock of my life. After watching the recordings from his car and the voice recorder that I had left in our bedroom, I now knew the truth. My husband was having an affair with my best friend. Not only that, but he was also planning to divorce me once Jason was 18. The two of them had even begun making plans to kill my brother and take his inheritance. That was the reason he adopted him, so that it would be easier for him. I was dumbfounded. To think that I didn't believe my brother and stupidly made him apologize for trying to tell me the truth. After giving the voice recordings to my lawyer, I stormed to Kathy's house. I was speechless when I arrived and saw not one but 2 Kathys. She introduced the second lady as her best friend. I explained what I was there for and showed the video to her and her best friend. In it, Kathy was making plans to kill my brother and then had used her best friend to make it look like she was innocent. Having been found out, Kathy was disappointed.
I'm so sorry for my behavior toward your family, Amelia. Please forgive her.
But I wasn't interested in forgiveness. I called the police and she was taken away. I stormed to my company with more police officers and arrested Desmond. Confused and not knowing what was happening, he yelled as they pulled him away.
Let go of me! I'm not a criminal!
At the station, they were both told their crimes and bowed their heads in shame. They were charged in court for planning to murder. Desmond had a longer term because at the time, Jason was his son. I divorced him and took full custody of my brother, ensuring he would never have any right over him. My brother and I relocated to Italy afterward. 5 years later, Desmond was released. I'd gotten married to someone better 2 years before. Hearing that he was out, I returned to the country with my husband, Jason, and my daughter. He heard that I was in town and came to see me to tender his apology. He was without a job and had no house of his own. He told me that his parents, which he lied at the beginning were dead, were in serious debts and also had failing health, and he needed his job back as companies were refusing to accept an ex-convict as an employee. I refused, telling him, "I wish you suffer for the rest of your miserable life." Afterward, I had my security men drag him out of my office and throw him out of the building. Months later, received a call from his parents that he made some really bad friends and was so broken they decided to rob a jewelry shop and was shot in the process. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.